Hi, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 86. I'm speaking with Laura Vanderkam. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
All right, so welcome to a brand new episode. So I'm going to quickly just get this out of the way for anyone who hasn't signed up for the Fireball training that I have available right now, which is 10 videos over 15 hours of high-end visual effects training. You can get that at allanmckay.com/fireball. We go through doing digital pyrotechnics, dynamics, or disintegration effects, shader, lighting, compositing, in After Effects, Digital Fusion, Nuke, Fume Effects, Thinking Particles, Max, just loads and loads of stuff. So definitely something to check out because it's only available until July 14. At the same time, I'm also launching the mentorship. This is the first time I've opened the doors for registration in the last year and a half. And so this is your one and only chance, probably for another year, to get in. So if you want to find out about that, either sign up at allanmckay.com/inside, and that will get you on the email list where we're discussing all that stuff right now. Otherwise, I also will be mentioning it through the Fireball training. So either way, go to allanmckay.com/fireball, sign up for the free training, and you'll also be able to get information about the upcoming mentorship. And like I said, all of that is only available until July 14, and then it goes away. So just a heads up about that, and forgive me, I've got a croaky throat today, so my voice is breaking like I'm 12 years old. Now, that being said, I wanted to quickly introduce Laura Vanderkam, who is the author of several time management and productivity books, including What Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast and 168 Hours. So a lot of her publications include Fast Company, Fortune Magazine, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. So I thought it'd be really cool to talk with Laura. I've gotten so many people, even just the past week, reaching out to me about their number one issue being time, managing themselves, managing time, getting things done, and being productive. So this is a subject that I'm a big fan of, and I've put out a bunch of episodes related to this before. In fact, I want to do a bit of a mini course later in the year on this. I want to be putting out a lot of training content around the subject because I kind of feel like it's one of those things that if you're not managing your time well enough, then everything else that you're doing is really not going to be nearly as effective. You need to get that in order before you tackle everything else. And the minute you do get that productivity, you start hitting the ground running with all the tasks, the things that you need to do. You start actually getting things checked off of your list. That's when you can start to go into overdrive. And until then, like I said, the more we waste our time, the more ineffective we're going to be overall. So this, I thought, would be a really good episode. I wanted to kind of jump the queue and get this episode out sooner than later because I thought it would be really great to share this discussion I had with Laura about a lot of her productivity tips and advice as well. So let's get into this episode. And like I said, check out the training. And if you want to sign up for the mentorship, all of that's going to be available. Just go to allanmckay.com/fireball. Now, for anyone not familiar with the mentorship, this is a 1-year mentorship. It's over 750 hours of visual effects training you get access to, as well as being personally mentored by me throughout the year, alongside a very amazing community of artists and technical directors that all have the goal of wanting to help each other move forward. And I love how positive and effective this training has become. For me, it's the proudest thing I've ever accomplished, and I'm friends and family, I feel, with everyone in there. And I'm really excited about this. It's been a year and a half since I opened the doors for registration previously, and so I'm excited to be opening it again for a very short amount of time, as we're going to be kicking it off in mid-July. So this is your one and only opportunity if you want to be a part of this visual effects mentorship. So again, allanmckay.com/fireball, and let's dive into this episode. Awesome. Well, I say thanks again for doing this. And if you want to quickly just introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Laura Vanderkam, and I am the author of several time management and productivity books, including I Know How She Does It, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, and 168 Hours.
Cool. That's awesome. And just want to give a bit of insight into your background, because again, just as we're talking a moment ago, you obviously have a big background in time management, and I'd love to know how you kind of got on that path. If there was any nightmare stories that kind of, made you obsess about trying to find that solution.
Unfortunately, it would be a lot better story if I had some rock bottom moment that I then came out of saying I've got to change everything and bring others with me as well. But unfortunately, fortunately, maybe that is not the case, because my life is just not that interesting. But I worked for years as a journalist, mostly on my own, but doing projects for a few places as well. And I've written a lot of profiles of people and become very obsessed with people's schedules for some reason. I was always fascinated to see if there are people who are doing amazing things professionally and yet don't seem to be making the harsh trade-offs that one says are required on the home front. They're very full personal lives as well. Well, what are they doing? And of course, I realized that all these people who are doing that don't have any more hours in the day than the rest of us have. So maybe they are allocating their hours in interesting ways that the rest of us can learn from. And so I began writing more about time management and eventually started writing books on the topic.
Cool, that's awesome. Actually, I don't know why, but lately I keep quoting Arnold Schwarzenegger a lot. I don't know why that is. It's kind of random, but I mean, that was one thing that I remember I think he was giving a talk at Princeton, which I think you actually went to. But I just remember him talking about one of the big things that a lot of people do complain about is not having enough time. And for him, it's just like, look, I have the same amount of time as you do, and if I'm able to accomplish this, and this, surely you can, get through having a part-time job and while you study to pay your tuition and all these, basic things. But I mean, you're right. I think that some people are able to really kind of stay on top of their hours and really kind of see where the time is being used efficiently and where it's being wasted. Whereas some other people kind of are pretty oblivious to the fact that, they get up, and before they know it, it's already noon and they haven't accomplished anything. And for me, my audience is definitely a lot of artists who work crazy hours. And I think that we all can really benefit a lot from being more aware of where our time goes. I mean, what do you think are some of the big time traps that a lot of people tend to fall into?
Well, it's funny. I mean, the certain obvious ones that come to mind are surfing the web randomly, social media, things like that. But while that is part of the problem, I don't think in any way it is the bulk of the problem. People waste incredible amounts of time doing things at work that look like work, but aren't necessarily all that important. So going to meetings that did not need to happen or did not need to take as long as they did, going through the process on something that you've gone through multiple times before, you don't need to go over it again, and yet you are. There's just lots of things that happen at work that are not top priority things, and yet we do them either because it's in front of us, it's on our calendar, it's always been there, whatever reason. There isn't a good one. So I think those are the more insidious forms of time wasting, because if you're on Facebook for an hour, you kind of know that you're on Facebook for an hour. Eventually you're like, that was a waste of time. I didn't like those people in high school anyway. But that meeting you went to, it looks a lot like work. Like, look at me, I'm being productive. But being on Facebook wastes an hour for one person. Like a 10-person meeting that didn't have to happen, that wastes 10 people hours. So that's much worse. Yeah,
actually, just to touch on that, I mean, I was going to ask you about that later because I found that, meetings, there's a place called Industrial Light and Magic, who George Lucas used to own, Disney owns now, and it's one of the largest visual effects studios around. And the acronym is obviously ILM. So the kind of inside name for that at ILM was always I love meetings, because we typically get stuck in meetings all the time. And that's just one thing that I found, the more I kind of started to break away from meetings, and just when people came by my desk saying, hey, we got a meeting in a few minutes, it's like, well, I'm going to get this done. Do you want me to attend this or focus on my work? The more I kind of skipped out of meetings, the more I'd end up getting an hour or 2 hours of my day back. I mean, do you find there's any scripts that you use or recommend people use for getting out of meetings? I mean, how well do people respond to you when you say hey, I don't want to attend any meetings right now. I want to try and get stuff done instead of wasting time?
Well, probably it's not wise to say to someone's face that meeting with them is wasting time. But I would say that certainly if one's manager has you scheduled into a lot of meetings and you have a lot of sort of individual contributor work that needs to happen as well, you would say, listen, I have these hours that I focus best. I really want to devote them to these creative projects you've assigned me to. Would you help me protect those hours so I can do my best work for you? And often people love to be appealed to from that perspective, like, will you help me? Or what's your advice for me on how I can protect these hours, right? Appealing to people for advice. But I think the other thing is a lot of it's self-inflicted too. I think we need to get over this idea that being invited to a meeting is an honor. It does not show that you are important. It may show that people think you have nothing better to do. But that's what happens in a lot of companies is it's like, oh, well, who's at the meeting? That's the cool kids. It's like middle school cafeteria all over again. And I think we just try to resist that idea. If there's one person from your department going to a meeting, like, you don't need to go. That person will do what they need to do to represent you all and bring it back to you. And you should trust the person. And if you don't trust the person, you've got a bigger problem than probably too many meetings on your schedule.
That's a good point. And I mean, in general, most of the time people take notes or minutes of what meetings are going on anyway. So, I mean, a lot of the time you can just kind of say like, hey, like, let me grab the minutes. And if you need me, come get me. Like, one of the common things that we have in film is we'll always have dailies where you sit with the director in the morning and review all the work for the day. And I do find that stuff's pretty critical. And even if you don't have stuff to show, it's kind of motivating to see what everyone else is doing. But at the same time, like, it kind of ends up being a big hangout where everyone comes in and spends 2 hours like looking at what everyone's doing, when I've always found like the easy solution is just to say like, hey, if you need me, or if my shot's coming up and needs to be reviewed, then just come grab me or text me real quick and I'll be there. I mean, that way you're spending 5 minutes a day rather than literally 2 hours. And again, most people in film start at 10. So I always see that kind of habit of coming in, doing dailies, and then, oh, it's lunchtime. So go to lunch. 1 o'clock comes around and, that's when it's time to actually start your day, which, is that vicious cycle that by the end of the day, you're like, oh crap, I got to work late now because, exactly. It's the vicious cycle, but it's kind of on you for not being on top of your own hours and being aware of where you need to apply them.
Yeah. And the other issue with that, I mean, is that afternoon hours are often when people are a lot less focused. Many people have a better ability to focus in the morning. And so one of the problems with morning meetings is you're going to go to a meeting regardless once you're scheduled and supposed to be there. So it actually doesn't have to occur at your top energy time. And so it makes practical sense from the perspective of these film dailies that you'd have the meeting in the morning and then, go the rest of the day. But on the other hand, what that winds up meaning is that people spend what could be their best time in meetings as opposed to doing their creative, productive work. So, I think it's just something for organizations to consider, that maybe you're better off having more of your meetings in the afternoon when people are actually at a lower energy level, because they will come to the meeting and they do have to go to it. But the productive, intense, focused stuff can then happen in the morning when people are better able to tackle it.
No, I completely agree. And one of the subjects which you've written about, and I'm such a firm believer in, is taking advantage of the mornings, I guess, more than anything. And again, I'm always going to keep going back to like what I think are really bad habits with film, but like, obviously everyone loves to work late nights, and especially in this industry, everyone kind of sees that as a badge of honor, saying, hey, I've worked 2 days without sleep is meant to be a cool thing, whereas it's so unproductive and damaging long term. For me, I also find like just the general thing is that most times when people are working late hours, it's more of a big slumber party. Everyone's hanging out, at each other's desks, getting about 2 hours of work done over the span of about 6. And for me, I've always been a big firm believer of coming in early for dozens of reasons. But do you want to elaborate a little bit on, some of the major benefits of working mornings or getting up early, at least to tackle your day?
Yeah, it really is for many people the most productive time of the day. Many people will tell themselves that they're not morning people, but it's because they're tired in the morning. And that's because they stayed up too late. But if you look at what they were doing in those late night hours, it's like you said, it wasn't productive. It was 2 hours of work for 6 hours of being there. The rest was straight up socializing, but not in a sort of good way where you all enjoy your dinner together and then go home. I mean, it's like inefficient work and inefficient socializing. And so, it's the worst of all worlds. The thing you said, though, about it being a badge of honor, I think it's funny. People love to talk about how busy they are. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because you don't want to be like, I'm so important. Like, we can't say that to other people. Like, look at me. I am so important. I want you to acknowledge how important I am. So instead we say, oh, I'm so busy, because it implies the same thing. Like, my time is so in demand. Everyone wants a piece of me. Mm-hmm. and so we say we're busy and try to structure our lives to appear as such. But, if you're coming in at 10, like you said, staying late is not actually putting in that long of hours. No. It's the same thing. It's like, you came in at, 7 and worked till 7. That's the same as working from 10 to 10. And yet, you didn't have to do the late night. But mornings are really a great time for many people for getting stuff done. It is often time you can have to yourself before everybody else does want something from you, if that's the case. If you want to exercise, for instance, it's a good time for that. You only have to shower once. It could be a good time for hanging out with family, particularly if you have young kids who wake up early, but who also go to bed early. If you work late hours, you probably won't see them at night. So maybe you should shift the family time to the morning, have family breakfast instead of family dinner. It can also be a good time for career focused stuff. If you have a side project you want to do, for instance, if you wait until the end of the day to see what energy you have left over to tackle it, I can already answer that question for you. There will be no energy left over to tackle it. But if you get up in the morning and do it, then there will be. You devote your best hours to something that matters to you, and then you can go about doing whatever else it is you have to do.
Yeah, Netflix is a lot more appealing at nighttime when you're going to sit down and work on the book or the side project or whatever you're going to do.
Exactly. You can watch other people's stuff on Netflix at night. If you want to make your own show that's going to be shown on Netflix, like, you should get up in the morning and do it.
That's right. And yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's been so many times where, the solution for anything has always been get up early. Like, I run a mentorship, and one of my students, he works in the industry, works crazier hours than anyone else. And his kind of rebuttal for anyone who ever said, like, oh, I want to do Allan's course, but I don't have enough time, was always like, I got up an hour early every day. And that meant I had 7 more hours to study and work on bettering myself and my skills. And I think that in general, for anyone who ever says, like, don't have enough time, it's just get up an hour early.
Exactly. And I don't mean that anyone should be sleep deprived. I'm not a big fan of sleep deprivation, but again, if you look at what most people are doing in the hour or so before bed, it is nothing that is advancing them or their organizations toward their larger goals. So better to put a stop to it, go to bed an hour earlier, wake up an hour earlier, turn those unproductive evening hours into productive morning hours.
That's good. And, like, do you have any, I guess for anyone who has barriers over, like, I'm not a morning person, I could never do that. I mean, do you have any hacks or advice or rituals for people who want to kind of shift to being more of a morning person?
Well, you could try having a child. That's a good way to force yourself into a morning person.
But I thought you just said you don't approve of being sleep deprived.
Well, there are trade-offs, of course, but certainly most parents discover that their young children will be up earlier than they want, no matter what you do. So it winds up shifting you more into a morning person schedule, regardless. I think what you can do. Again, there are some people, I will admit, there are some people who are night owls, and that is the way they are. And the way to tell, again, is, are you writing that great American novel at night? Are you truly doing your best work at night? Or are you just doing that slumber party thing you talked about, with hanging out with your colleagues, shooting the breeze, but you're not actually getting anything done? If you're watching other people's stuff on Netflix instead of writing your own TV scripts, again, you're not a night person. You're just staying up late. So it's important to understand that difference. If you're actually doing your most productive, best work at night, then fine. You are a night person and you need to structure your life to deal with that. But for most people, that actually isn't the case. That if they got to bed earlier, they could certainly get up earlier, and they might find that they had a lot more space in their day because they're spending that time doing things they cared about, as opposed to the puttering around the house and watching Netflix.
That's good. And I mean, one of the things I'll say is, like, again, for me, getting up early in the morning, it's more about the quality time. I mean, if I'm going to work in the morning, let's say I go to work early rather than working till midnight every night. I mean, some of the key benefits of that is that, again, one of the really negative effects of working crazy hours is it affects relationships, friendships, everything around you. I mean, if you're working till midnight every single night, trying to beat deadlines, things like that, then obviously you're going to be sleep deprived and you're going to see your friends. You're not able to maintain a realistic lifestyle. Whereas for me, like getting up at 5, getting to work at 6 or 7, and no one's coming in until 10 in the morning, that's so effective because even that 3 or 4 hours that I might be doing before anyone else rolls up, those hours are worth twice as much as they're going to be later in the day. Like the amount that I can get done, I feel like I get an entire day done before anyone else even arrives. And then usually by that stage, I can kind of, be a bit more in cruise control instead of panicking because I've had that focused blocks of time.
I hear that so often from people. I mean, people who have shifted to doing some focused work in the morning have told me, I'm getting more done before breakfast than I used to all day. Literally, that is what people will tell me. And partly it's that, your life gets interrupted all the time. If you're at the office, people are coming in to see you. They're coming in to talk with you. Then there's all the meetings, which may or may not need to happen. Whereas those morning hours, you can delve deeply into the things that you need to do. If you set top priorities for that, once you've done it for the day, you've done something. Like whatever else happens in the day, you've scored a major victory. And that can often propel you to do other great things as that momentum carries forward. So yeah, I'm a big fan of getting up, getting it done, and then letting the day go as it goes.
Cool. Yeah, I think that could be a slogan, is like there's no meetings at 5 in the morning. So, I mean, in terms of productivity, is there any habits you typically focus on, such as batching your tasks or logging where your time's going, so that way you can kind of reflect at the end of the day about like what got done and what didn't, how things could be done more efficiently, anything like that?
I am a big fan of tracking time. I have actually been logging my time for about 2 years continuously now, which sounds a bit freakish. I admit that I know how I've spent every half hour for the past 2 years. So I am not going to share all that with your audience, but it's been enormously helpful for me. And I write and study about this topic. Like I felt like I knew time in and out. And then I started tracking my time continuously, and I still learned more things about my schedule and my habits and what could fit in my life. I highly recommend trying it. Most people discover that where they think the time is going is not necessarily where the time is actually going. Mm-hmm. And it is good to know that, because then you can decide if there are things that you want to change. You can also decide that there are things you want to celebrate that maybe you weren't giving yourself credit for. So that's good to know as well. It's just the truth sets us free in so many ways. And I think the truth about where the time really goes does exactly that.
That's awesome. And in regards to like any tools or resources you recommend, or you like me, you're more of a pen and paper person?
I'm a pen and paper person, but for time tracking purposes, I'm a spreadsheet person, which again, I know the word spreadsheet is another freakish sort of word that probably nobody likes to listen to either. But for me, it works. I have weekly spreadsheets that have half hours of the day from 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. along the left side, and then days of the week from Monday through Sunday along the top. So I record a week on that, and half-hour blocks for me are good. Like I can sort of be vague enough that I don't have to be tracking every minute. But on the other hand, I sort of know roughly what I've spent the last half hour doing. I check in probably 2 or 3 times a day just to write down what I've done. I don't go in every half hour, certainly. But by doing this, it's allowed me to see where the time goes and decide if I like it or if I don't like it and what I can do differently. So I highly recommend trying it, not for 2 years. People don't have to do it for 2 years, but try it for a week. Right? Mm-hmm. Just a week. You can get a real good picture of your life and decide what you think is working.
I think it's awesome because, you get that bird's eye view. You're able to look at everything a bit more in perspective because, again, I think that we all get that tunnel syndrome where we're in the trenches and we're just trying to get through the day. And sometimes later in the day, you can look back and say, all right, like me running out to the post office to mail something and me running out to pay a bill, I could have done all that at the same time and saved, 3 or 4 tasks together, save a lot of time that way. Same deal with, anytime, at least for me, like I'm a big fan of trying to deflect any distractions. So when you got 3 or 4 people a day coming to your desk wanting to hang out, there's a great way to tell everyone, like, let's go for a Starbucks run at the end of the day. And that way we can shoot the shit and get a coffee and do all of it in 15 minutes instead of, blocks of 20 minutes of people hanging at your desk, kind of distracting you while you're trying to get all your stuff done so you're not working late.
Exactly. That's a great tip, by the way, is to tell people who want to see you and yet you can't really give them the attention right now, when you will see them, and make a definite plan for that. That's often enough to get people going. It's like, okay, I would love to hear about this. Let's meet for coffee at 3:00, which is when you probably need a break anyway.
Exactly.
And then it's good. And then they're gone. They're out of your hair until you actually do want to see them. And then you can have fun at your coffee break.
I'm a big fan for lunches, like trying to, as much as I can, make lunches more for me. So that way, if there are things I want to do, let's say I want to go study something or read a book or whatever, then, using my lunches instead of hanging out with friends, which I think is still really vital, but having that 1 hour block is an additional hour that you could spend doing something that's more productive for you. And at the same time, like, I do know that there's a lot of people who kind of negatively respond to that too, where if you keep telling all your friends you don't want to hang out because you want to go and read a book or watch a course or whatever, then they always want their me time. But again, it's more about batching. So usually for me, Fridays is like, let's all go get a beer at lunch. We can hang out. And that way you've got a group of, 5 people, whatever, wanting to hang out that would have hung out with you during the week. But then you've got an additional 4 hours of your week that you can spend guilt-free doing what you want to do.
That can work.
And in terms of list building, I mean, I'm hammering you with questions, but it's just because, again, I'm really fascinated by the subject. And for me, I'm kind of curious, like, do you tend to build your to-do list or plan your day the morning of or the night before?
So the daily list, I tend to do the night before. And that's because I want to be able to hit the morning ready to go, know what I need to tackle for the day. So I use those morning hours for the things that are most important for me to do. But I don't just plan my life sort of on a daily basis. The sort of functional unit of how I plan is the week. And I always plan my weeks on Friday, looking forward to the next week, and figure out what are my top priorities professionally, what are my top priorities personally. I figure out where I'm going to do each of those things. And then knowing that I have those things blocked in, can tell me, well, this is going to be a great week. And then each day I make the to-do list for the day, looking at those priorities. So I make sure that I am making progress toward whatever those are in the course of each daily to-do list.
No, I love it. That's really cool. And I guess for people who want to kind of right now decide, okay, yeah, I really need to start being productive and I need to break a lot of bad habits, it takes a lot more than just kind of making that decision. Like, is there any kind of key advice you would give or a step-by-step checklist of, these are the things you got to start doing right now to start getting your time back?
So the first thing I always recommend is just what we talked about, the time tracking, because if you want to spend your time better and you don't know how you're spending it now, that just doesn't work. Like, how do you know you're changing the right thing? How do you know that you're doing more of what you should be doing more of or less of something? I mean, maybe you're doing more of something than you think you are. Like, if you don't know the data, it's hard to make wise choices. So first, figure out where the time is going so you know what you're working with. Then once you have that, you can ask yourself, well, what do I like about my schedule? What do I not like? And what do I want to do more of? And what do I want to do less of? I think that second question, that what do I want to do more of, is by far the most important. When it comes to time management, people are very obsessed about spending less time on various things. And a lot of time management literature is all about, like, how can I shave bits of time off everyday activities, all these life hacks that people have that are somehow going to, save 2 minutes here and somehow you're going to make a beautiful life out of those 2-minute chunks. I don't think it really works like that. I think you first decide, here are the things I want to devote my time to, the things that matter to me. These are the hours I have allocated to them. And then I'm going to do whatever I can to protect that time. And then I will deal with everything else in the other time that exists. But committing to put those priorities in the schedule first is really what makes the life you want possible. That's
awesome. Yeah. And again, one of my favorite topics that you've written an article about was monotasking is the new multitasking. And do you want to elaborate on that? Because again, I feel like so many people are so proud of, like, in job interviews, like, I'm a great multitasker. And it's just like, oh God, okay, that means you have like literally no attention to devote to anything.
Exactly. I would hope that HR people are starting to see through that. Hopefully they've been reading the literature on this, that would not be a plus in your category anymore. For the most part, multitasking doesn't actually work. It is, if your brain is trying to focus on 2 different things, you're really just toggling back and forth between them and doing each relatively inefficiently instead of actually doing 2 things at once. Now, there are some situations where that's okay. They're using very different parts of your brain. So for instance, if you are exercising with a friend, that's fine, right? You're multitasking, you're getting that relationship time in and you're exercising, but it's not things are at cross purposes with each other. Whereas trying to answer email while you're on the phone, you're pretty much doing the same thing. You're trying to engage with all these people and answer questions and have a conversation.
That can be very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. You're trying to have two different conversations, and you're going to either say the wrong thing to someone, or you just be inefficient about both of them. You miss things on the phone call. You won't answer the email in the way you meant to. So basically, the way to think about it is, if you can answer email while you're on the phone with someone, like, it wasn't important enough for you to be on that call. If you actually do not need to focus enough on that call that you can answer email, then you shouldn't be on the call in the first place. If there is a meeting you are in that you are checking email in, again, then you shouldn't be in that meeting. Excuse yourself. Get out of there. Go do what you've decided was important for you to do at that moment, which is the email. If that's not the case, then focus on what's going on. I think what happens is that we just get bored, and we lack any ability to deal with that. And so hence the email comes out and we think we're multitasking and getting more done.
You shift your attention to other things. Facebook's always good for that.
Exactly. So, if you can be on Facebook while you're talking with someone, like, just stop.
I agree. I mean, I think it says a lot of, about the person you're talking to if your attention's going to something else at that time. So I have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap things up. But for me, again, working from home, I'm assuming you do a lot of that, right?
I do.
And I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I think everyone always thinks that working from home is a dream and it's going to be really, really easy because you can just work from your PJs. But what's your thoughts? Is it pretty challenging at times to work from home and kind of stay focused?
I think working from home is wonderful, but I think you need to have a certain personality to make it work. I think you can't be constantly drawing stimulation from other people. Like, you need to be self-focused and self-disciplined. If you're the sort of person who can't stick to assignments you give yourself if nobody's watching you, then you should not be working at home, because you'll just, again, wind up watching Netflix and that's not going to work.
I'm getting my $13 worth every month, that's for sure.
Get $13 worth every month. And, the other thing I would say is some people think, working from home is great. I'll get to spend more time with my kids, which maybe, but only the time that you would have been commuting. If you are attempting to interact with your kids while working from home, somebody's getting the short end of the stick. Either it's your organization or it's your kids. And there's nothing really great about spending time with kids while you're also answering email. It's just as rude as if you're doing it to an adult. So get childcare if you have young people ever at home with you, or, work while they're in school. Either way, that's fine. But make sure that somebody else is giving them full attention while you are giving your attention to work.
No, I think it's great. And again, I think it's something that, at least for me, I always treat it as if I am at the office. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm going to drop everything every 10 minutes because your partner needs help with something or whatever. You got to treat it like, if I was at the office, would I be stopping everything to do the groceries at 11 in the morning when I've got deadlines or whatever? You've got to kind of treat it as if, like, all right, I need to respect the fact that I am at my job, and just because I'm not in an office, I still got to treat it like as if I am, and I've got those boundaries in terms of where my personal time is able to be kind of accessed.
Yeah. And the thing about working from home is I really don't think it needs to be either or for many people. I think there's much value in having some days as these focused work from home days where you really crank stuff out, where no one's interrupting you. And then be in the office some other days too, where you can have more of that interaction with people and bounce ideas off them and all that. And so I always get frustrated when I read articles about saying either that working from home is more productive or that working in the office makes people more creative or whatever. I mean, it's like, yes, and we need all of this. These are all different modes of working, and we need all of them. And so for many people, I think getting maybe 2 days at home and 3 days in the office, or 3 days at home and 2 days in the office, would be a great split and would enable them to get all aspects of their job done in a good fashion.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll leave it there. Again, I want to be respectful of your time, but I'd love to be able to pick your brain about all this stuff. It's been really awesome. And again, I think it's such a vital subject for a lot of people that I'm hoping that, everyone's ears are pricking up a little bit and thinking, hey, like, where's my time going? Should I start tracking it? Should I start seeing like where I can be a bit more efficient and not waste as much time? So, I mean, this is really cool. And like for everyone who wants to find out more about you, about your books, articles you're writing, where can everyone go online to track you down?
Yeah, come to my website. It's lauravanderkam.com. That's just my name, lauravanderkam.com. I blog most days there, and I have a great comment section. My commenters are much better than most people on the internet, and we'd love to have your listeners be part of that as well.
That's so awesome. Thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that episode. Apologies again for my froggy throat right now. But again, I want to thank Laura for taking time to do this episode. I thought it was really great, and she shared a lot of really great advice. So again, if you want to check out her website, and all of that and more is located in the show notes. So we have really in-depth, amazing show notes. And yeah, I think it's a really effective resource just to continue following on from here. So if you want to check out the show notes, it's allanmckay.com/86. And I'll also leave a link in there to get to the Fireball training as well. So if you want to spend a year with me being personally mentored, doing a lot of visual effects, a lot of scripting, pipeline development, compositing, just making our work better and being better workers ourselves, then this is definitely that opportunity. So again, go to allanmckay.com/86 and I'll leave a link in there to find out more information. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. I believe next episode I'm going to be reposting a career intensive that we're about to be doing with everyone in the Fireball training. So again, if you sign up for that training, I'm going to host the first ever public career intensive. These are ones I usually host privately inside the mentorship. So this is something I'm excited about, and hopefully my voice is cleared up by then. But basically, I'm going to be reposting the recording of what we go through. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back next episode. Until then, have a productive week and rock on.